Shame on, man. Here's Johnny. You're gonna need a bigger boat. Wow, so serious. Roll out. I am Iron Man. This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Welcome to episode 87 for October 19th, 2014. I'm JD Duran.
I'm Mike Messina.
And I'm Barry Riddell.
Thanks, guys, for joining me this week. As you guys probably just heard, you didn't hear Blake's voice because he is out sick this weekend. So I have Barry from the True Bromance Podcast jumping in, as well as Mike Messina. Mike, this is your first time on the show, man. I know we've been trying to get you on a few other times, but logistically it just didn't work out. So I'm glad you're finally here on the show, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where we can find your awesome reviews on the internet.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad to be here. So I run MikeTheFilmGuy.com, where I have movie news and reviews. I try to cover all the breaking movie news and review most movies that come out. So you can just go to MikeTheFilmGuy.com or YouTube.com/MikeTheFilmGuy.
And where can we find you on Twitter?
At Mike the Film Guy. It's all pretty simple.
Yeah, definitely go follow him. Really great stuff. Also joining us, as you heard, Barry from the True Bromance Podcast. It's a podcast I listen to every week. It's fantastic stuff. Barry, thanks for being here, man.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the high praise of our our fantastic show.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can we find your fantastic show?
Well, we are on Twitter. You can find us on Twitter at True Bromance Cast. That's true without an E because my co-host can't spell very well. We do a show every week where we kind of review a new release and kind of pop it into a list. It's very similar to your show. You can find us on iTunes just by searching there in the Platinum section for the best podcast. We're in the Platinum section of iTunes.
Yeah.
Something
like that.
Something like that. And we're also recently just on Stitcher. So if you access podcasts through Stitcher, we are now there. You can search us at True Bromance Podcast. So
yeah, definitely go check it out. The banter between Hyro and you, Barry, is just, you won't find it on any other podcast, I don't think. It is amazing.
Yeah. Wait till you hear the show this week. We go at it. So.
Oh, I'm sure. I can't wait to listen to it. But speaking of our show this week, what we're going to be discussing is Brad Pitt's latest adventure into World War II and David Ayer's Fury. And going off of that, we're going to be discussing our top 3 war movie scenes, which I cannot wait to get into. And for our third segment this week, we're going to be doing a new segment called Class is in Session. And I'll lay out the details when we get to that part of the show. But before we get into it, toss it to you first, Mike, man. How was your week?
My week was pretty good. Saw some movies. It's been a crazy week for like superhero news.
Yes,
been
crazy.
It's like a war between DC and Marvel right now.
Yeah.
Who can drop the biggest news? It's pretty good week.
Yeah, very nice. It has been a big week for news, that is for sure, which I'm sure you'll hear some of that in our third segment. But Barry, how was your week, man?
My week was pretty good, man. Busy. The weather here in Virginia's kind of taken a turn over the weekend. It was actually fairly cool today. Had to wear a jacket out and about, but it's been nice. Got to see some movies, spend some time with the family, so it was a solid week.
Very cool. Yeah, it was a big week for me, too. It was my wife's birthday this weekend, so we got to spend the weekend in Gatlinburg, Tennessee at a nice little cabin. So that was fun. We were with some of her nice friends. So it was a very relaxing weekend for sure. Before we get into it though, real fast, I want to pimp our latest extra film segment where Brennan and I discussed Kill the Messenger, and Dan from Talking in Circles joined us as we reviewed the trip to Italy as well. It was a really fun conversation. So definitely go and check that out. And the last thing I want to say before we get into it is you probably hear different music and you heard a different intro to the show this week. And as I mentioned on the latest extra film, speaking of, I said that there was going to be a change to the show, and we have a new intro, which we've been working on for quite a little time now. And I have to say a huge thank you to Eric Schmidt, who put that together for us. He was fantastic to work with. Really great guy. If you want to get a hold of him, I got to plug him because he does some really great sound design and music production. Just email him, Eric Schmidt, SCHMIDT, ericschmidt.es@gmail.com. get a hold of him. He does phenomenal work, and we've been looking forward to releasing this new intro for a little while now. He did some awesome work. I love it. I hope you guys love it. And again, a huge thank you to him. All right, so guys, Fury was my number 2 most anticipated film this fall. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it.
And here we go.
You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast, episode 87. Guys, there's not much else to say except ideals are peaceful, history is violent.
Radio's 86. We're on our own. Good shot.
Oh, that wasn't me. No, I'm the instrument, not the hand. God didn't call us today. You hear me, boys?
What's he doing up there? Big paradise. Everyone else came up, snake eyes, but us.
Lord's protection.
We got it, don't we, boy?
Yes, sir.
We got it.
sir.
Norm mowed them down, didn't he, too?
Hey, good job, Norm.
Welcome to the army, Norm.
You did good.
Best job ever.
Best job ever.
Best job ever. Best job ever.
All right, Fury is written and directed by David Ayer and stars Brad Pitt, Shia LaBeouf, Logan Lerman, Michael Pena, John Bernthal, and a few other people as well. All right, guys, like I said, I was hugely anticipating this, but before I get into it, I want to toss it to you first, Mike. What did you think about David Ayer's Fury?
Well, I've been looking forward to this movie for a while, and Brad Pitt is one of my favorite actors in the world, so I always look forward to his performances. So overall, I found Fury to be a pretty good movie. I thought I liked their approach, how it was just like a more personal war movie rather than a lot of more war movies are like kind of big picture.
Sure.
And you know everything that's happening, but this was just like over the course of a couple of days.
Yeah.
And I thought that the best part of the movie was just the actors and their performances. I felt some of it to be kind of laid out oddly. I would have liked to know a little bit more of like the characters' backstory, so I could have felt a little bit more attached to them.
Sure.
But overall, I thought the actors all had really good chemistry together, especially Brad Pitt and Logan Lerman. So when I did my review on it, I gave it a 7 out of 10 overall.
All right, what about you, Barry?
Yeah, I like you said, JD, and like Mike said, I was really looking forward to this movie. I think it was my number 2 most anticipated film for the fall-winter season. And it really almost completely lived up to what I was hoping. It felt maybe a little bit short of what I was hoping it would be. But overall, I really enjoyed this movie. I think David Ayers has proven to be a writer-director that can handle action scenes very well.
Yes.
And when given when given some freedom and creativity, he can make a very good movie. This to go along with something like End of Watch, which I really enjoyed from a few years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm really impressed with his work, and I'll see a lot of the things that he does from now on. I think he's on my list now. So if he makes anything, I will be there watching it.
Well, I'll make it 3 for 3, and it sounds like I might have liked this a little bit more than you guys did. I really love this film. I was hugely anticipating it, and perhaps some of that means that I was a little bit emotionally invested before going into it. Because I will say, like you, Mike, the one thing that I would put as a criticism, and maybe my only one of the film, quite honestly, is there wasn't really enough backstory on these guys. If you're emotionally invested from the very get-go, as I was, it's going to work for you in a lot of ways, I think. But I will say that there could have been more of that. That being said, this film is incredibly brutal. It is so visceral and raw and incredibly graphic and so unrelenting in so many different ways. It is such, in my opinion anyway, such an authentic depiction of bloodshed. I mean, I'm just going to spoil one of this right now. At one point, there is a guy's head that is vaporized from a projectile from a tank. That's some of the stuff that we see in this movie. It is incredible in terms of the violence in this film. But I do think, though, that this film, while it does hit on some of those cliches that, war is hell kind of thing, for me, there was much more under the surface than that. I think the film does hit on identity, the lostness of humanity, which a lot of other films do, the dehumanization that war will do. But I do think that in the third act, and I'm not going to give spoilers away here, but we will get to some of the stuff happening in the third act. I do think that there's some stuff going on with Logan Lerman's character and how he kind of affects the other guys that kind of brings a little bit of a redemptive factor that we don't really see in a whole lot of films like this. I think David Ayer's direction is immaculate. It's really broken up into 3 distinct acts that was very meticulous, and perhaps it could be weird in some ways, like you were saying, Mike, but for me, it very much worked. A lot of rich camera work, and like I said, it was very gritty, very visceral in terms of its aesthetic. It was really dark color palette. But I thought the staging of all the action and the characters was just flawless. There's one scene in the middle that will feel a little out of place, but I do think it works, and I'm sure we'll get to that too. But there's just such a great attention to detail here in terms of the tanks and the way they're moving and tracer rounds and the projectiles that, to me, I just felt like I was in the action with these guys. And it was such an intimate setting that, for me, I was just with all the characters from beginning to end. Like, I was on board. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time.
Yeah. One part about the movie that I really liked was, like you were saying, it's really intimate. And I love the scenes that they shot actually in the tank.
Yeah.
It was, you actually felt claustrophobic. You felt like you were in there. It was like, I like the way that they shot that. It was, it felt real. And, like I was saying, all the actors, they actually embodied these people. I've seen, a lot of interviews with these guys, with the marketing the movies, going on talk shows and such. And they've all been talking about how they just went through a lot of training before filming this movie.
Yeah.
I know Shia LaBeouf went all out. He
went over the top. Sure.
He went as far to pull his own tooth out.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
That's Shia for you,
Yeah. What about you, Barry? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you guys kind of mentioned how visceral and almost brutal this movie is, but I think it's also interesting that it's like a dirty film. Like, you see the living in this tank, the kind of just the constant motion almost. You never really see these guys kind of stop to clean up for the most part. Like, they're always just going. They're kind of dirty.
Yes.
Their faces in particular, there's a lot of things that go on with that. And the tank itself, I mean, it might be cliche to say, but, the tank, that it features such a prominent role in the movie, but it is a character into itself. I mean, they kind of treat it with respect, and they do a lot of things.
Has its own name.
And, of course, it has its problems. Yeah, and I mean, they've got to work on it. And they just do a really good job of kind of incorporating that into the movie, whether they're inside the tank, whether they're standing on it, or whether they're just kind of breaking around it, essentially. Like, they're never far away from their home, essentially. And I really, really like that.
No, I completely agree. The tank really does become its own character. And every time the camera would pan and I would see the name Fury on the gun, I would just get chills. Like, I was just so into this movie. It was amazing. And speaking of the characters, one of the standout things of this film, and I think, Mike, you touched on this already, is the performances are just superb. I think Brad Pitt is so incredible here. He's dark and brutal, but I also think at the same time he's kind of an emotional leader. I think there's more to this guy that we can talk about here in a minute, but I think he is absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to throw this out there, and maybe I'm the only one in this boat, but of his World War II characters, I might take this one over Inglourious Bastards. I know that's a big statement, but I loved him here. I think he's darker in a lot of different ways. But another thing I want to touch on, a lot of people like to give Shia LaBeouf a lot of crap. And in real life, he's a bit of a crazy guy, for sure. And I have stood up for this guy more times than I probably should. But if you don't think this guy can act, watch him in this freaking movie. He is incredible. He is so good and adds such a huge pivotal piece to the character, especially for Brad Pitt's character later on in the film. But he is amazing in this film. The dude can act. Say what you want about his personal life, but the dude can act. John Bernthal. We got to talk about this guy. He was absolutely magnetic. And I mean, he's probably most known for, the times he was on The Walking Dead and probably a few other TV roles. But in this movie...
He was great in Wolf of Wall Street last year.
Yeah, Wolf of Wall Street was awesome in that.
Man, this role, I'm hoping that this role will get him more stuff because he was fan-freaking-tastic here. Michael Pena, another robust performance, and Logan Lerman, very pivotal, very potent in terms of his arc as well. But I thought the cast just really gelled together. You could feel the camaraderie between the two guys, especially in that first scene when they showcase the devastation of the battle that they were just in and kind of the lostness that happened there. You really felt that, and you really feel that these guys rely on each other. It really is a brotherhood. I bought every second of it. I loved the performances here.
Yeah,
very good.
Speaking about like Shia LaBeouf, I've actually honestly been a fan of Shia for most of his career, even back when I was young and I was watching Even Stevens back on TV. Shia, I mean, as of late, things have gotten a little kooky and everything. But at the end of the day, this guy, I actually think, is a really talented actor. Yeah. He was in Nymphomaniac earlier this year. I saw him in that, and he was great in that as well.
I agree.
And, he, in this, as far as Fury goes, he just totally embodied this character. It was such a raw performance. I absolutely loved it. As far as probably my favorite performance, because in this movie, I would have to go with Logan Lerman. And it's kind of surprising that I say that because Brad Pitt is one of my top 5 actors of all time. I just love Brad Pitt to death. He's awesome. Yeah. But Logan Lerman, I think, is going to be one of like the new big faces of Hollywood, honestly. Yeah. He's young. He's just he's a really likable guy. I don't know how you guys feel. When he's on screen, he just feels really likable and just like your typical kid. I think he's getting into his 20s now. So I think that he's probably going to start doing, more serious stuff. He's not going to probably be grabbing as many like the young adult adaptation type stuff. I mean, he was really good in The Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Amazing. Yeah.
He was great in Noah, I thought, earlier this year. So I think that Logan Lerman is going to be someone that everyone in the world is going to like know in like maybe in like probably 2 or 3 years time. I think that he's going to be, an actual serious actor and I wouldn't doubt it if maybe in about 5 years you start seeing his name in like Oscar categories, maybe sooner.
Interesting. Let's talk about his character's arc, though, because he obviously has a pivotal role here.
Yes.
And when we're quickly introduced to this character, we automatically get the sense that this guy is not really built for war. He's not really made for it. And the team quickly realizes that he's as much a threat because of that than he is a help, because he is now introduced as a new tank gunner because the team's previous one was just killed in that first scene, and the team starts hazing him, which obviously isn't endearing at all, but they realize it's going to be an anecdote later on in the film, which I do want to get to before we finish this discussion. But I also want to toss it to you guys too, because I think the crystallization of that first act and his story arc and where they go from being inexperienced to pretty experienced very, very quickly in some pretty visceral, extreme ways. What did you guys think about that arc when we first meet him?
I think, when you're kind of introduced to Logan Lerman's character as he becomes this new tank member for the crew, I think, while a lot of people might not like it, I think it's very true to how the military is. When someone new comes in to a close-knit group, especially someone in that type of tank environment, it really is like a foreigner, like an outsider. And while you're willing to work with them, there's definitely, you don't have that trust factor. You've not been through anything together, especially in a setting like this where they talk about, they started fighting Germans in Africa and they basically moved up through into Europe. So these guys, you get the sense that they've been together for a couple of years, in all honesty, if you kind of understand the scope of how long we were fighting in World War II. And it's just really interesting how they kind of react to him. And, they're almost resigned to the fact that, this guy, not only is he completely inexperienced in war, but he's not even qualified to be in the tank. So they're concerned about that.
Yeah.
Right. So not only are they concerned about that, but then, there's also this factor of not wanting to get too close to the new guy because he could die at any time, that's, how many people do you have to bury in the field where, you don't come back from that. There's just a lot going on in that scene and that initial interactions that they have together that they're going through that I think is just really incredible. Yeah, and I agree. I liked, I didn't love his introduction necessarily. I didn't love his first arc. I like, but as he definitely grows, I warmed to him. Sure. But I definitely think it's very interesting and it's important for the movie.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Mike?
As far as his arc, and we're talking about the first act, it was kind of like a typical introduction. You get introduced to, the crew, and then, here he comes running in like, fresh kid off the block. I kind of expected that, just to be, them to have a little bit of, like you said, just kind of be hazing him. I thought that one of the first scenes, when he goes into the tank, the guy he's replacing, he was just killed, and that's not a spoiler. That's literally like in the first minute. You don't even see the guy alive in the movie. And you see that face, there's half of this guy's face just sitting there in the tank.
It's violent,
wow. Like that, but I love that they actually put that in there, because that just shows how brutal and how rough this war was. That was, I really liked that, and he was just kind of thrown into this, like you were saying, he's not trained for this at all.
Sure.
And he is just kind of thrown into this group of guys who are really used to this. These are some tough guys. He doesn't want to kill people. These guys have no problem doing it, and he needs to learn quick, or
Sure. No, I completely agree with you guys. I do think that when we first see him, it is a little formulaic in some ways, seeing this fresh kid that has no skills at all in this particular manner. But there's something about just the dirty rawness and just the closeness of these guys and the way that they go about hazing him. And more importantly than that, the ruining of his innocence and how that will save them later on down the road, I thought was incredible. I really love the exploration of that. But at the same time, I don't think they completely break him. And I think that's on purpose. And there's some stuff that Pitt does in the second act that I think that I think kind of goes towards that idea, because I feel like in some ways his innocence is a little refreshing to them, because it gave them a sense of normalcy that I think was very needed, because this is very much toward the end of the war. You could even argue that really they don't even need to be fighting these battles. I mean, we are literally in the last days of World War II when this was happening, and David Ayer breaks up the intenseness and just the unrelenting nature of war to have a little bit of a dinner party in this village.
Yeah.
And I think that was so pivotal to these characters, and with Logan Lerman especially, and them kind of grabbing onto this innocence and this normalcy that just kind of gave them their humanity back for a minute, because these are guys that are tested and very damaged by war. And we do see that in this scene a little bit. I think it's very much a delicate scene as much as it is terrifying. And the gestures showcased in that scene, I think, reveal something a little bigger and deeper within the war. It's not just about the hellish nature of it. I thought that dinner scene, for me personally anyway, I thought was really neat, and I think is the heart of the movie in so many ways, because it's not just about war. It's about these guys wanting and desiring that normalcy, that humanity, at least for a little bit. And they see that in Logan Lerman's character, and I loved how that was handled.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's interesting because the dinner scene, I do think it's a very interesting scene, and for me, it was one of the more intense scenes in the movie, considering all the thing else that happens, because I feel like there's a couple times you're not sure where it's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of interactions between different characters in that scene that, you're kind of like, what's going to happen here? And the one thing that you said, that the sense of normalcy, I kind of agree with, especially for a couple of the characters. But in that scene in particular, John Barenthal's character, like he's on the edge. Like,
yes.
And I mean, he really is kind of struggling to be in that situation, like Brad Pitt's like, we're trying to have a nice meal, he just can't tone it down. Like he's
so damaged, he doesn't know how to react.
Right. He's just, I mean, it's really incredible to kind of see that, and how the other people almost react to him, how the two German ladies that are in the scene also are kind of unsure of what's going to happen. I mean, it's a really intense scene. I really enjoyed that particular part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I found that I've talked to quite a few people actually about this scene in particular. It seems to be the scene of the movie. This, because it's so different from the rest of the movie.
It is very,
all the other people who have seen this movie, that I know have seen this movie, and I've read the reviews, and we talk. It seems to be kind of split 50-50. I feel like you either really love it or you really hate this scene.
Sure.
I've noticed a lot of people think that the scene is too long. I don't know. I am one of the people who really liked this part of the movie. I thought that it was very necessary. The fighting stops. There's just a moment of quiet.
Yeah.
You see, Brad Pitt and Logan Lerman, they're trying to, like you said, have this, this moment of normalcy, and he's just trying to relax in this very hectic war. And, like you're saying, John Bernthal, he is just so far gone from this war and what it has done to him.
Yeah.
He is, he doesn't have, his, like, he has no manners at all. He is just completely, just like I said, just gone.
Sure.
See, that's plays into kind of like something that I wish there was a little more backstory, just a little bit, just so that I could have seen like maybe who he used to be.
Sure.
But I mean, I can respect the fact that that David Ayer was going for like, this is them, this is now, because it really was a movie that was just focused on right now in these few days. But that scene, it was really emotional. Things are revealed about the characters that you didn't necessarily know. You didn't know that much about them, but there are things revealed in that scene, and you get to know the characters a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I agree, because they do reveal some of their past. They even show visually some of their past, and I don't want to give spoilers away as to what that means, but there is some stuff there, and in some ways I kind of like the air doesn't fully take us out into flashbacks or something. Like, I didn't necessarily need all of that. I got a sense that there is a past. It's obviously very arduous and very tense, but it's kind of brought them together, and obviously we see them very tested, very damaged. But one word that you used to describe that scene, Mike, that I completely agree with is that it was very necessary. I think the dynamics happening in that scene is really the heart of the film in a lot of ways, as much as it is a quote-unquote tank movie. But moving on, before we get into final thoughts real quick, I want to kind of touch on the scene that they have with the Tiger tank, which is the big German tank that the U.S. just could not match up against. Like, the U.S. Sherman tanks were very much ants compared to this Tiger tank. And we get to a scene where we see 4 Shermans battling this one Tiger German tank. And for me, I felt the menacing presence of this tiger from the very minute that it's introduced. It was so intense and breathtaking. I felt every projectile and every miss and every hit was so visceral. I thought it was so well staged and so well choreographed that from beginning to end, it was kind of like a small sliver of gravity for me last year, where I just couldn't breathe. Like, I was just in the scene with these guys as they're screaming, and it's chaos. It's just nuts. And Shia LaBeouf is really giving it his all. I loved him in this scene, but for me, it was amazing. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that scene too.
Yeah, no, for me, I really like that scene. I thought it was an incredible scene. One of the better war scenes that I've seen in a movie. Like you said, the U.S. tanks really don't hold any comparison to the German tanks, accurately from the war. And I mean, it's 3-on-1, and this tank is just, it's just really kind of, waylaying people. And it's just incredible because you are, on the edge of your seat again. And like the way he kind of controls the camera, and, they just have this tank battle in the middle of this movie.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Something I don't think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And I love the way it was handled. I love the way it kind of developed and went along. And, I just really love the power of that scene and kind of how that plays into the end of the movie. It was incredible. Very
much incredible. I agree. How many tank movies have we seen before? I'm sure there's not many. And whatever ones that are out there, I don't think there's a scene shot like this one. It's crazy.
No, it's amazing.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, this scene, I, like you said, you say you couldn't breathe. Like, it was intense. I was just sucked in, and I didn't know what was going to happen. It was scary, you know? These guys, they're scared out of their mind, you can tell, but, they can't even act scared because, they just can't. Like, they have to, it's their job to, like, go up against this tank. And you mentioned Shia LaBeouf. Yeah, he nailed it in this scene. In this when they're going up against that tank, awesome. Yeah. I thought Logan Lerman was good in that scene, really good in that scene as well. Brad Pitt's character, he's the leader of this group. Yeah. I really liked how he has like this presence over them, and during that scene, you really felt that presence. And I think Brad Pitt is really good at, to kind of giving you this unsaid feeling of just him being there. It's just, you know that he's there without him even saying anything. And he is really good at just projecting, the leadership in this movie, and he is very much the head of this group.
Yeah. All right. Well, I got some more I want to talk about, but we got to get to final thoughts and grades. So I'll toss it to you guys first. Any other final thoughts, and what grade would you guys give Fury?
Okay, so Fury was, I thought it was a good war movie. I thought it had great performances from the cast. I couldn't ask for a better job from the cast members. Brad Pitt, Logan Lerman, Michael Pena, John Bernthal, Shia LaBeouf. They were just so good, and in my opinion, the best part of the movie. I liked that the movie was different in that it just focused on a few days, and it was really personal. kind of a problem I had with the movie, a negative would be that it kind of felt a little predictable, in my opinion. But, you know, I'm not going to knock it too hard for being too predictable. I mean, and overall, it was just a good movie, and the third act is just awesome.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I'm gonna go with a B-. You know, it was,
Okay.
you know, yeah, it wasn't. It was. I was really looking forward to this movie, and it wasn't like. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't like Saving Private Ryan or anything for me, which is one of the best war movies of all time, in my opinion. But it was like, you know, it was a really rough and tough movie, and it was brutal. So yeah, it just had a few, you know, predictable moments, and I thought that they could have went in a few different places with it. But overall, it was a good movie.
Okay, what about you, Barry?
Yeah, you know, I guess the only other thing that I would say that hasn't been kind of mentioned a couple times already was that I really liked how in this movie David Ayers kind of portrayed the U.S. military, or at least this particular tank group, as I would say almost raw and not necessarily the picture perfect good guy. Like a lot of times the U.S. military is portrayed, especially during World War II in movies. Like there's not a lot of interaction with you know, the town folks from where they're going. There's not, you know, hearts and minds kind of things. Like there's a lot of things that go into this movie that, you know, if you look at it, you could almost see it as being a bad thing that they've done. Sure. And I really appreciated that because I thought that was realistic, and, you know, it kind of allows the viewer to make their own decision as to what, you know, are the things they're doing good? You know, does it make sense in the grand scheme of things? And I really loved that aspect of the movie. Yeah. They didn't make them, you know, like Mike mentioned Saving Private Ryan, where I can feel like you can kind of almost make out those guys. I love that movie too, but they're almost like Boy Scouts. Like you love everybody and they never do anything bad. And I mean, it's fine. It's really good, but, you know, I like it. But in this movie, it's not like that. It's I agree. It's more raw. So I like that. And the only other thing I would say for me is there's a few things that happen kind of in the end that I did not completely love. So for me, that takes it down a peg or two, and I'm going to give this an A-.
Well, like I said, I think I'm a little bit higher than you guys because I did love this film. I will say before I get to some of my final thoughts on the third act, my favorite scene in this film, or one of my favorite scenes anyway, because I'm an Air Force guy by nature. Like that's the thing that I was drawn towards. That's the thing that I always wanted to do growing up. And while this is cool that we get to see a tank movie, because like we said, we haven't seen much of these before, there is one scene where Brad Pitt's character, while they're just riding the tanks, nothing crazy is happening. They're just in this field, kind of going to the next village. And Brad Pitt's character looks up, and you see this huge bomber squadron, this huge fighter squadron, and he looks up and he says, "Give 'em hell, boys." And the hairs on my neck stood up. Like that was speaking to my heart in huge ways, because for me, that's the thing that I would have loved to do. If I was in World War II, I would have been in a P-51 flying with those bombers. So that, to me, I think spoke really loud. I thought that was a really cool touch. But getting to the third act, the one thing I want to say is I do think that Logan Lerman, his character, while we said that there is kind of a rough beginning, I think towards the third act, while there is some predictable things that happen, I love the way that this plays out, because for me, it wasn't so much about what's happening on the surface or the circumstances necessarily surrounding them, because we have seen things play out like this before. But for me, it was more about the impact he has on the group, because for me, it was sort of a redemption for these guys in a lot of ways through duty. And that culminates for me in one little sequence where Shia LaBeouf's character is talking about Isaiah 6:8 from the Bible. His nickname in the movie is Bible, and which is kind of a weird thing in itself that Shia LaBeouf is playing a Christian character. That's a whole other podcast for another time.
Yeah.
But he's talking about Isaiah 6:8, and for those that don't know the Bible at all, that verse says, "I heard the Lord say, 'Who shall I send? Who will go?' And then Isaiah responds, 'Here I am, send me.'" And that's something that Shia actually says to the group inside of this tank, which for me symbolically, especially when they're at this literal crossroads, I think held such a nice symbolic touch to the movie because it played into their characters in some extreme and pivotal and potent and brutal ways that for me I loved. It had some significant consequences, both good and bad, that for me it wasn't so much about the fight, the physical fight. For me it was more about the internal fight and them together in it. And that verse for me, it has some personal connotation to it that I won't go into here, but I loved the way that it was used here. I loved how it intervened with the characters in that moment. It was so significant. So I love the way that it was handled despite some of the predictability of it. I absolutely had a ball with it. So overall, I agree with you guys. I think this is a fantastic film. It's really potent, really brutal, as we talked about. I love the scene where Logan Lerman gets his nickname. They're talking about the best job they've ever had. That was one of my favorite moments of the trailer. Totally lived up in the movie. For me, I was just so emotionally invested. I think this is such a compelling film. It's so fluid and so gripping. And David Ayer, when he writes and directs a movie, it's gold. I love him. So this is an A+ movie for me. It's also in my top 5 of the year. So anyway, if you agree or disagree with our takes, you can let us know by leaving a comment on our Facebook page at facebook.com/InSessionFilm. You can tweet us at InSessionFilm, or you can leave a comment on Google Plus or email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. All right, coming up next is the InSession Film Top 3, and we'll be discussing our top 3 war movie scenes. You're so ugly, you could be a modern art masterpiece. What's your name, fat body? Stay tuned. We'll be right back. The InSession Film Top 3 is brought to you by the awesome and lovely guys at the First Time Watchers Podcast. And like the guys in Fury, these 3 guys have a great camaraderie and brothership that you feel every time you listen to the show. They're a great supporter of our show, and it's definitely a podcast you got to check out. It's hosted by Tim, Walter, and Hermano, and these guys, they know their movies. Their banter is amazing. It's very entertaining, and it's one that you got to listen to. And what's unique about it is that they pick out a movie that they've never seen before. All 3 of them, they get together and they discuss it. And it's really fresh, really unique. And they also talk about trailers they've seen recently, other films they're watching, and whether they would recommend them or not. And it's fantastic. The show is very fluid and it's very easy to listen to. So you might be asking, where can you find these guys? Well, there's a couple ways you can find them. First, go and check them out at firsttimewatchers.blogspot.com. Also hit them up on Twitter at firsttimewatchers, and also find them on Facebook. Just search First Time Watchers. Go subscribe to them on iTunes. Leave them a review. Let them know that we sent you to them. These guys are awesome. They're a fury to listen to. Go check them out. Again, that's First Time Watchers. You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast. This is episode 87, and now we're going to be talking about our top 3 war movie scenes. But before we get into it, I wanted to ask you guys, did you have any specific criteria that you looked at to pick your list this week?
No, I just kind of, scanned my brain for what are my favorite movies? And then I kind of thought about, well, which of my favorite movies have, war scenes in them, which are war movies.
Sure.
And then I thought about, what are some great performances, performances that I just love, or what are some moments where I've gotten chills in war movies. And that's basically, that's how I put my list together.
Okay. What about you, Barry?
My list, I thought about a lot of really great battle scenes from movies that might not necessarily fall completely in the war film category. So I did try to go away from those, even though I think they just, like, they're obvious choices. So I tried to pick some that aren't there, but I won't mention those in case they're on your guys' list. Not that that's a bad thing, but maybe for the sake of a few things different, I left some very obvious ones off.
All right. Well, for me, I tried to keep it to films that were dedicated to actual war and something that's a little bit more grounded. So I did not include like fantasy or sci-fi films or anything like that. Okay. And I also tried to keep it to scenes that was more about the actual war and not some of the subplots of war. So, for example, I love Schindler's List, but that wouldn't have been something for my criteria here. Okay. Or even like The Great Escape, which is more about a prison, more of a subsect of the war. I tried to keep mine more to the actual events of the war itself, is where I tried to include mine. So, also, as far as my criteria, I did not include the beach scene in Saving Private Ryan. I think that would have been too easy of a choice for me. It's a great number one choice, most likely. It's fantastic. So while I love that scene, I love that movie, I didn't want to include it here. And then the last thing I want to say before we get into it is, given some of, at least on my list, I don't know about your guys's, but there could be some spoilers here for some of the films that we're going to talk about. So just a fair warning to those out there listening. We'll try to make it as much spoiler-free as possible, but I think with some of that, it might be hard to avoid. So that being said, Mike, lay it out for us, man. What is your number 3?
All right. Okay, so my number 3, it does fall under, well, it's not fantasy. It's more, this one's sci-fi. And it's from Independence Day, and it is the speech from the president in Independence Day.
Okay.
It's not, it's not like a rough war movie or anything. It's not like Fury. It's not like a really, rough World War II movie or anything. It's a fun movie.
Yeah.
And it's, it's, say with the movie what you will. A lot of people
I really like
love it.
Yeah.
But some people are like, oh, it's kind of corny or whatever. But I mean, I think that it's a really good movie, and they're working on the sequel now. But I remember hearing that speech for the first time, and I just got chills, and I still get chills when I hear that. I think that speech is definitely one of the most known in at least recent movie history, maybe the last 30 years. Just it was. I always say that speech and the speech from Braveheart are like the two that kind of are.
Sure. Yeah.
I almost put the Braveheart at my number 3. I guess that would be kind of like an honorable mention.
Yeah. Sure.
But definitely just that speech in Independence Day. It's like I say, it gives me goosebumps, and I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't include sci-fi in my criteria, but as far as that film goes, that speech, as cheesy or corny as some people may want to say it is, I really like it too. I love it. It's one of my favorite parts of that film as well. So, all right, Barry, man, what do you got at number 3?
All right. Well, my number 3 is actually a sci-fi flick as well too.
All right, Independence Day?
No, it's not Independence Day. Mine's actually what I think is a very good movie, directed by Mr. Paul Verhoeven, and I'm talking about Starship Troopers.
Nice.
And the battle for Klandathu, when they first kind of encounter this bug army. And it's incredible. This is one of the most brutal scenes I've ever seen in a movie. I mean, Paul Verhoeven's obviously known for kind of having some very graphic stuff in his movies, but there's just so much, these bugs ripping people apart, almost like an insurmountable odds. Like, they just are overwhelmed. People are cut off left and right. And then obviously it's kind of being filmed at the whole time within this weird Paul Verhoeven, like almost like military, like he's like a political videos, he's trying to like rally the troops essentially, and like it's just not going well, and it's just really incredible all the things that happen throughout that movie, and I really liked it. I mean, the second battle, the big battle where they get the brain bug, is also very good as well, but that first battle on Clondathu where they encounter the bug army is incredible, and that's my number 3.
Very nice. When I threw out the question on Twitter, we got several responses for this film, so you are certainly not alone in thinking that.
Nice.
Barry,
Okay, nice.
Very good stuff. For my number 3, I'm about to create some controversy, boys. Hope you're ready for this. I'm going to a film that most people hate, and I think they hate it for some good reasons. I also think they hate it for some very dumb reasons. And I think a lot of it has to do with the director himself, and we'll leave it at that. But I do think that a lot of the criticisms for this film are very valid. The movie I'm talking about is Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor. Now, this is a film that I think has tons of potential. Now, in my opinion, I think if you take out the love triangle aspects of it, because that part is ridiculous and stupid, if you take that out of it, this is a really good war movie, in my opinion. I think we see one of the best presidents ever portrayed on screen in this film. I think we see some of the best war action in this movie. And in particular, we see the best air-to-air combat dogfights we've ever seen on film. And that specifically is the scenes that I'm talking about in this movie. Say what you want about Michael Bay. No one had shot air-to-air dogfights the way that we see them in this film when Pearl Harbor came out. We actually see how gravity affects the planes. We see how it affects the bullets and the tracers. That was so visceral and pretty realistic for the most part in terms of their maneuverability. Now, them flying in hula shirts, unrealistic, sure. But outside of that, the actual flying, and not just when they're attacking Pearl Harbor, but there's a couple scenes too when Ben Affleck is flying for the RAF that I thought were really well shot, really well staged, and choreographed as well. So in terms of the dogfighting, and like I said earlier in the Fury review, I'm an Air Force guy. I love this stuff. If I lived in World War II, this is what I would be doing. When people ask me the question, if you could live in any time in history, where would you go? World War II, so I could dogfight the Germans. That's a legit answer I give people all the time, because for me, it's something that speaks to my heart. I just really like it. It's just a passion that I have. And say what you want about Pearl Harbor, the love story stuff is terrible. I'll give you that. But everything else, to me, I think is really well done. And I don't think it gets enough credit. I think it's really good, especially the dogfight stuff. So anyway, my rant is over. Dogfight scenes in Pearl Harbor is my number 3.
I like that pick, man. Now, that for me, it's weird because I've only seen Pearl Harbor, I think, like once and maybe half times, and the only thing I can remember about it is the love triangle.
Sure.
Michael Bay, he gets so much crap, but like you said, AJ, I mean, you defend him all the time. The guy can direct action. I mean, it's incredible. Like, he really can direct action.
I do think that he's a good action director. I enjoy some of his stuff, but just with these, I think with these last 3 Transformers movies, he put a lot of people off in, maybe not just fans, but critics. I think he's put a lot of people off as, respecting him as, a serious director. I would like to see him approach do another war movie.
Sure.
And because I think that if he did do just another, straight up grounded war movie, that he could maybe, Pearl Harbor, in my opinion, wasn't great, but I would take that over, 3 out of the 4 Transformers movies any day.
Sure.
Well, I think I was
just saying, let's not forget the reason that this movie is bashed isn't because of the action stuff. It is bashed because of the script, which he didn't write. But a lot of people think that he wrote this movie, and he didn't. He had to go with what the script was given to him by the studio. That's what the studio gave him. That's what he shot. And the best parts of this movie are the action stuff, the stuff that he is good at. And that's what makes, I think, this pick and really just the action stuff so great. And I think that's why it's fitting here. To me, Pearl Harbor, we're getting a little bit on a side tangent, but It's mostly a bad script, which he didn't do. And I think that the record needs to be set straight on that. But anyway, we're getting off. Mike, give us your number 2, man.
Okay, so my number 2 has already been mentioned. I guess it's kind of an obvious pick, but I went with D-Day, in Saving Private Ryan.
It's a good choice.
Good choice.
I mean, it's a very well known and it's probably, like you said, an easy choice, but it's an easy choice for a reason.
Yeah.
It's just a great movie all around, of course. But it's just, you feel there, and I feel like nothing is held back. I remember the first time I saw it, and I was just blown away.
Yeah, no, and for very good reason. Like I said, if I was doing a true top 3 without any criteria at all, this would be number 1 for me. Pretty much easy, hands down as well. So, I mean, it's a great scene for a very good reason. Yeah. All right, Barry, what do you got at number 2, man?
My number 2 is from a movie that I think is pretty underrated as far as a war film, and I think that's because there's no Americans in it. And I'm talking about Enemy at the Gates and that opening battle for Stalingrad.
Yeah.
This movie, I mean, they obviously probably take a little bit of liberty with the historical accuracy, but in the opening scene when the Russian army is handing a magazine to one soldier and a rifle to the next guy, and a dude on a bullhorn is yelling, when the guy next to you dies, pick up his weapon and use the ammo we just handed you. That's lunacy.
Crazy.
On a level that's probably never been seen again. And then after they're just repelled back from these massive fortified German forces, their own soldiers, there's no retreat, and they get fired on by their own people. I mean, it's crazy. It's incredible. The first 5 minutes or so of this movie, when they get this battle going, it's some of the most impressive war scene I've ever seen. And I really like this movie overall. After that, it kind of gets into a much smaller scale battle, but that opening battle is incredible in scale.
Yeah.
The lunacy of what's going on. I just really enjoyed it.
No, it's a very good one. It was actually a very good honorable mention for me as well. I don't think it was ever going to make my top 3, but one that I had to at least put on it as an honorable mention. And another one, Barry, that we got on Twitter as well a few different times. So
look at me. That's because I keep mentioning all these on Twitter, so I'm just throwing you the ones that I mentioned earlier.
There you go.
Make it easy on myself.
There you go. Very good stuff. For my number 2, I'm going to a pretty popular film, but one that spoke pretty highly to me as well. And I'm going to the ending of Apocalypse Now.
Yep.
I want to start off this by saying that I was reading Roger Ebert's review on this earlier when I was kind of researching my top 3, and one of the lines that opens one of the second paragraph of his review said, "The film has one of the most haunting endings in cinema." And that to me, I think, said it all. Like, that was like one of the first things he said about the film. And when we're talking about this list, I wanted to pick the ending for this, and that was in his review. And I was like, wow, that's perfect. So him and I are on the same page as far as this film goes. And I do think that this has similar themes to Fury, where Kurtz, which is obviously played by Marlon Brando, fantastic in this film, and just about the lostness of his humanity too, and kind of the horrors of war and how that's destroyed him. And we also see that there's probably no hope for this guy in so many different ways. And the movie is really about the journey of the Willard character kind of understanding where Kurt's come from, possibly how he got to this. And they do have some conversations toward the end where some of that is revealed. And I think part of why it's so potent, one, we do get an understanding of the Kurt's character. We get an understanding of why he's just so tested and torn. And this was a guy who was a seasoned warrior. He was really incredible, on the verge of becoming a general. And he eventually ended up getting to a spot where he could just not live any longer without being crazy and just living with this despair all the time, which was so heartbreaking and very arduous to watch. And I feel like Marlon Brando's casting was so perfect for this, because his voice just really set the tone so incredibly well. And those final words that he utters just screams about the realities of war and just the difficult nature of it, that to me was just so powerful, very potent, and it was just really well executed. So for me, the ending to Apocalypse Now, and there's obviously a ton of other scenes you could choose from. Obviously, another popular one is the smelling of napalm in the morning.
Yes.
So that's obviously another big popular one. I considered it, but for me, when I was looking at this film, I think it was the ending for me that just really elevated it to a really high status that it's really known for. So for me, it was the ending of Apocalypse Now. Was my number 2. All right, Mike, lay it out for us, man. What do you got at your number 1?
So, okay. When I thought about number 1, I went to what are my favorite movies of all time? And then I started to think, my favorite movies of all time are the Star Wars movies. And they have the movie Wars in them, so I was like, okay, that'll work. And then I thought, okay, well, what is considered like I guess anything in the movie could be considered a war scene, but I mean, I wanted to kind of keep it close to what we were actually talking about. My favorite scene really of like all time, my favorite movie of the trilogy is Return of the Jedi. I know most people it's The Empire Strikes Back, which is my second favorite. But I almost decided to choose the throne room scene, the final lightsaber battle between Vader and Luke. But I decided not to because I wanted to keep it closer to just straight up war. And I think when they're actually fighting in the ships, that's more of like a war scene. So I decided to just take it from the original Star Wars movie, Star Wars: A New Hope. The battle versus the rebels and the Empire. The Battle of Yavin.
I can't hold them. It's away. Negative. It didn't go in.
Just impacted on the surface. We're right above you. Turn to point 05. We'll cover for you.
Stay there. I just lost my starboard engine. Get set up for your attack run.
That it changed cinema, in my opinion. Just the first Star Wars movie came out, and everyone was like, it was so crazy that they were able to do this. This wasn't thought even really possible until Star Wars came out. Star Wars just changed really everything.
Sure.
And every time I can watch, I put on Star Wars, I feel just so much excitement, and it's my favorite thing in the world is Star Wars. So
I've seen you talk about this quite extensively on Twitter, so I am not surprised that this is your number 1. So
big Star Wars guy.
Yeah, very good stuff, and a lot to choose from that series for sure. And of course, it has wars in the name, so it certainly fits this top 3. Great number 1, Mike, for sure. All right, Barry, what do you got, man? Number 1.
All right, my number 1. I'm going old school. No guns, no machine guns, no cannons.
All right,
I'm talking about one of. I don't know if I'd put it in my top 10, but I do love this movie, Braveheart.
Yes.
And the battle. I think it's of Falkirk. I believe is what it's called.
I am William Wallace, and I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men, and free men you are. What will you do without freedom? Will you fight? Fight against that? No! We will run, and we will live. Die. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. and dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
And this scene is just incredible. I think Mel Gibson did such a good job with this movie of showing scale, of not relying on green screen and trick photography to kind of put people out there. I mean, he just had thousands of extras standing around in the field, and it just really added something to the weight of this scene and kind of how the battle plays out. And then obviously, if you've seen Braveheart, you kind of know what goes on there. Yeah. But I mean, it's just really, and it's so. Swords and axes, it's so close and it's so personal. And I mean, some of the sounds that are in this movie, that dull thud that squishes when the axe or the sword, just buries into flesh. I mean, it's just really sickening to kind of listen to it. And I mean, and it goes on, I mean, it's like a 10, 15-minute fight and you're just like, oh my God. And it just keeps going. And I really love it. I love the movie. I love this battle scene, and it's just incredible, and I felt like I had to put it on my list. And since I omitted a couple other ones, it was an easy number one choice for me.
Man, this movie, and even perhaps this scene, I feel like has made other top threes before in the past. In fact, I was kind of looking up some of our previous top threes that we've done, and it was like, because we started doing this on like episode 6, and I believe it was like episode 7 or 8. So it was like the second or third time we did this. Braveheart made a list.
Out the gate, man. You can find a way to put it on a lot of lists. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think I mentioned earlier. I think I did. Did I? I think I mentioned that I almost put it in my top 3. It was almost there. I was saying that it was. I think it was either going to be that or Independence Day.
Okay.
So and Mel Gibson's speech in Braveheart is just like.
Oh yeah, that's great.
It's just fighting for freedom.
I mean, you could even say that the small battle when they take the first English fort, right? Like after the things that kind of trigger Mel Gibson's reaction. Like even that small battle is incredible. And I mean, it's up close, it's personal, like it's just vicious. I mean, there's no other word to say it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great honorable mention. It was very close to making my list actually as well. For my number one, I'm going to Saving Private Ryan, but obviously, like I said, I'm not doing the opening beach scene, but what I am going to do is the stabbing of the American soldier toward the end. Oh, my God.
Auf! Du hast keine Chance. Lass es uns beenden. Let's stop. Listen to me. Stop. No. Es ist einfacher für dich. Viel einfacher. Du wirst sehen, es ist gleich vorbei.
This scene is incredibly devastating and so jolting, and it would have been so easy, especially with Spielberg directing this, for it to feel kind of like a pro-America kind of film, and in some ways it did, as you kind of were referring to, Barry, in the Fury discussion, is it does kind of have some of that. But what I love about this scene is that it's more than that, because at the end of this, and like I said, we're going into some spoilers here, this is a scene where the Germans win, and he wins pretty handily, and it's so brutal and violent and showcases the reality of that. And the reality is it wasn't just Americans that won the day all the time. There were real casualties, real losses, and another dynamic to this, and if you've seen the film, you know where I'm going with this, is that there was another player involved, and Corporal Upham, who was sitting in the stairwell. He could hear the stuff that was going on. He had the power to do something about it, but he was scared out of his mind. And in some ways, you can kind of sympathize with him, because he was in a situation that would be terrifying on its own. Plus, he wasn't built for this. The guy was like he was like a writer or something like that. He wasn't a frontline soldier, and he was just kind of thrown into this kind of last minute, and he didn't know what to do. And I kind of don't blame him, but at the same time, you're angry with the guy because you're like, you could have saved this guy. And the way that he dies is just awful because you see him pleading for his life as the German slowly stabs him, slowly pushes it into his heart, and is kind of like smooth talking him at the same time. It's just so heartbreaking and visceral and sad. And for me, I was just emotionally immersed in the entire thing. And it's one that stands out as far as, I mean, you're obviously going to have the beach scene at the beginning, but as far as other scenes that stand out for me, this is easily just as up there for me. And I think played a big role in that third act. So that would be my number one.
All right, I'm not going to hijack your podcast, JD, but this scene made my list in our show this week.
Oh, nice.
And I have some very strong feelings about it. And since you listen, I'll let you catch it there. But
okay.
I have a very strong reaction every time the scene comes on.
Well, I look forward to listening to it then. I'm glad we're on the same wavelength then. All right, well, I'll toss it to you guys. Did you have any honorable mentions?
Like I said, I have, Braveheart, the Battle of Falkirk. I have that. Of all the other battles in Star Wars, from Empire Strikes Back, Battle of Hoth, basically any battle in Star Wars. We'll just put that on there. The beach assault in Apocalypse Now. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Great scene. And then I guess I have the Matrix. that's another I love.
Sure.
That's technically a war. The final battle in the first Matrix movie. I like that a lot. And then finally, I would say, getting into fantasy, the Lord of the Rings movies. Just all the battles in Lord of the Rings movies are just awesome.
All right, what about you, Barry? What do you got?
I just had a couple. The move from 300 from a few years ago, the Battle of Thermopylae. I mean, that whole second through third act is basically one long extended war battle. I really like that. I had the beach raid also from Apocalypse Now, and I left it off my list because it wasn't a war movie, but the opening scene of Gladiator when they're the Roman armies fighting their Germanic tribes. That's the first time I saw that in a movie theater. I was blown away. The sound, the visions, it's incredible. I really liked it.
Very nice. I had a lot of honorable mentions, so I'm just going to go through these real fast. Schindler's List, the ending to that movie. I loved the digging of the tunnels and the escape, and the Great Escape is awesome. As I mentioned, the opening to Saving Private Ryan. I also had Braveheart. There's also a couple of other great documentaries that we didn't talk about that came out kind of recently called Rostropo and Korngold, and their sister documentaries. I would highly recommend them. I had the surgery scene in Black Hawk Down. I had the ending narration in We Were Soldiers, and also the wives in that movie handing out the letters. Very potent, very arduous. I had all of Lone Survivor, Full Metal Jacket, the first act of that, the ending to Platoon. I also had Enemy at the Gates, as I mentioned. And I could go on and on. I could probably pick scenes from The Hurt Locker, The Thin Red Line. I love all of that stuff. So anyway, that is all I have for my honorable mentions. Let us know how your picks stack up against ours. Email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com or leave us a comment on Facebook or Twitter or on our website at InSessionFilm.com. All right, before we move on, let's talk about this week's poll.
It's real bad, okay? I don't like those numbers at all.
Just one poll? Those things aren't scientific.
Yes, they are. All this is science. This is math.
Okay, so for our poll this week, I simply asked, what do you think is the best World War II movie? And there's a lot you could obviously choose from. So I just listed a few. I listed Saving Private Ryan, Schindler's List, The Bridge on the River Kwai, The Thin Red Line, Das Boot, and Glorious Bastards, or just write in whatever you wanted. And winning this poll, not surprising, is Saving Private Ryan with 36% of the vote. Coming in second place was Schindler's List.
Ooh, okay.
And in third place, Inglourious Bastards.
All right.
You guys surprised about that? What do you think about those results?
No, that's not too surprising. I'm a little surprised that Inglourious Basterds didn't come in second from that list alone. Not that Schindler's List. I maybe myself would probably put that. I don't know. Those movies definitely deserve to be praised and just awesome. Just the way they're made, and Spielberg getting his recognition in there. Absolutely. And deservedly so. He's just an amazing director. He is Steven Spielberg.
We also had some really great write-in options, but my favorite write-in that someone wrote in was Captain America. Which I thought was awesome. Oh my gosh. Which, hey, that fits, I guess.
First Avenger or the Winter Soldier?
First Avenger, yeah.
Okay. So, okay. Hey, technically,
I don't know if you would
war movie.
I don't know if you would accept it, JD, but on my write-in, I would have to put the Band of Brothers. I mean, I know it's not a movie, but there's no more accurate portrayal of the World War II, in my opinion, than that miniseries. It's incredible.
I agree. It's really fantastic. I wouldn't have considered it for my top three or for the poll necessarily because it's more of a miniseries. But yeah, I completely agree. It's really, really fantastic. But anyway, thanks everyone that voted on the poll this week and that sent us responses on social media. We got a lot of really great responses, so we really, really do appreciate everyone that got back to us. All right, coming up next, we're going to be starting a new segment called Class is in Session, and we're going to educate you on a few movie news or movie-related items coming up next. I'll explain further here in a minute. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Something more. What you said, I can't hear cause you ain't talking about nothing. 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 What you talking about? Baby talking about the same old thing. I'ma have to call a foul in the game. What you talking about? A little money, now you all OG. Talking about it's all eyes on me. Ain't talking about nothing. Let me guess you count money to the ceiling. Difference between us like at least a couple million. It's foreign cars, pretty girls everywhere you go. Yeah, I heard it 30 times on the radio. Louboutin ain't gon' pay you for that bragging. And Donatella probably never heard your album. Yeah, they probably about to label me a hater, but I know these people greater than the songs they created. It's little homies in the hood regurgitate, and everybody watching thinking that you made it. The truth is, for a few designer labels and a little bit of paper, now you 12 years slated. Hey, but you ain't LaPeter, so why you beat up and pushing people to lean on a double cup in a seizure? It sound like you put your feet up, still a slave and money came by.
Hey guys, just want to pause for a quick second to say a huge thank you to those that are supporting the show. If you want to help support us, there's a couple of ways you can do that. One, you can get some awesome fun bonus content on our website at InSessionFilm.com for just a small donation of 99 cents. They actually are free to listen to, but we do encourage and appreciate a small donation. Another thing you can do is you can get an InSession Film t-shirt or a tie or a mug or whatever you want on our InSession Film store, and you can find all those details at InSessionFilm.com/store. If there's maybe an item that you want our logo on that's not there, let us know. Hit us up. We would love to accommodate you in that purchase. And another way you can help us out, and if you're like me, you're busy, you're on the go all the time, and maybe you just don't have time to read and actually pick up a physical book. Well, one thing you can do is audiobooks through audible.com. And as mentioned up at the top of the show, if you go to audibletrial.com/InSessionFilm, you'll get a free audiobook and a free 30-day trial, and you'll be able to check out a bunch of audiobooks that will accommodate your busy schedule like mine. So it's a really great site. We really do encourage it, and everything you get through audibletrial.com/InSessionFilm goes back directly into supporting everything that we do, and we really, really do appreciate it. So no matter how you support us, we just can't thank you enough, and we appreciate everything you do.
I know you gon' label me a hater, but inside you are greater than the songs you create, mate. Here we go again in circles. I think I heard it all. We've been here before, but we need something more. Something more. Something more. What you said, I can't hear cause you.
Hi, this is Greg.
This is Chuck.
And this is Dan. And we are Talking in Circles. Because the world needs another podcast, we are here as Geekcast Radio's newest edition.
And as the title says, each week we get lost in conversation about a wide range of topics, including movies, comics, games, art, TV, and even occasionally sports.
We play games and discuss pivotal topics like who would win in a fight, the Kool-Aid Man or Tony the Tiger, and examine the hot-button issues of the world of geekdom.
We keep things fresh by taking timeless topics in new directions. We are simply three friends having a fun time talking about life's most fascinating foibles.
Stay connected with us every Tuesday on iTunes or at geekcastradio.com.
You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast. This is episode 87, and this week we're starting a new segment called Class is in Session.
Good morning, class. I said good morning, class.
All right, for this segment, guys, we're going to bring up a movie or like a movie news related item, and we're going to kind of educate people on this item. And I'm going to go first because I have a lot to say. So, all right, guys, class is in session. Today, we're going to talk about why Spider-Man needs to be in the Civil War, which Marvel announced earlier a couple weeks ago. And we know that Iron Man is going to be back. Downey Jr. seems like he's signing on to more films. We know that he's going to be in Captain America 3 to kind of set this whole Civil War thing in motion, which sounds like a lot of fun to me. Now, for those that aren't familiar with the comics, Spider-Man, the character, has a huge pivotal role in the middle of all of this.
Oh, yes.
Between Iron Man and Steve Rogers. So, Sony is kind of on the verge of collapsing, and they need finances in a huge way. Now, there are rumors floating out there that, hey, maybe this is a possibility, but we don't exactly know how that's going to work. Now, Sony, you need to kind of relent and give Spider-Man back to Marvel for a couple of different reasons. One, you need the cash. You need the money. And if you put Spider-Man within the Marvel movie universe, you're going to make $1 bajillion. So that's number one. Number two, what you've been doing with Spider-Man isn't really all that great. I've been kind of fighting for you for a little bit, but some of the decisions you're making as of late kind of is making me want to jump off of that bandwagon. So if you want to keep any fans that have stuck around, you probably need to do this. And we would love to see Spider-Man fulfill that story arc that is in the comics that so many people love. It would be a lot of fun to see that character interact with Tony Stark and Steve Rogers and all these characters that Marvel has done such a fabulous job, in my opinion, of building up. I think that would just be awesome, especially if Andrew Garfield could stick around and reprise that role. I don't know if that'll happen, but that would be a cherry on top for me because I've loved him. Yes. So, I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to add to that, but Spider-Man needs to be in Civil War.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely... I love that story. Not necessarily the ending. I don't know. Can we talk spoilers on Civil War comic books here?
No, let's try not to.
No?
Yeah, let's try not to.
Well, if you haven't read it, then go read it, guys. Yeah. Okay, so this is a good story, and it focuses it's Iron Man versus Captain America, and the sides are split in half, and over the Superhero Registration Act, and Spider-Man is like I said, I'm not getting the spoilers, but he is a big deal in this story, so it would be a great idea to try to get him. And that is where it gets interesting. Would it be Andrew Garfield? Because, he is he's a Sony property, this Spider-Man. So
Sure.
would that be canon with would the Amazing Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man 2 be canon? It would be really weird if it wasn't.
They would have to reboot it. I mean, I just kind of wish that they'll keep the actor because I love Andrew Garfield, but the character itself would have to be rebooted because
we would be getting a brand new Peter Parker. Like nothing has happened to this character until what we are seeing right now.
Pretty much. And I think the main reason you'd have to reboot him, and I think Marvel could do it in an intelligent way that would make sense, but the big reason you have to, I think, is because we've seen 2 Spider-Man films happening more or less at the same time as Marvel's been doing this Avengers thing, and there's been no mention of this chaos, this destroyed New York City within the Spider-Man franchise. There's been no talk of that, so logically it wouldn't make sense. They would have to rebuild it in some way.
See, that's where I don't... If they did keep Andrew Garfield, I don't think that they could... I don't think that there's a possibility of them keeping Andrew Garfield and it not being the same guy.
I agree. I completely see that point. And that would confuse a lot of people. Yeah. I'm just being selfish because I like him.
In a perfect world.
Yeah. All right, Barry, do you have any thoughts on that?
It's actually kind of funny because for your segment of class being in session, this is perfect for me because I'm honestly not familiar at all with this part of the comic book lore of the Civil War. So I'm just kind of sitting here quietly because I have nothing to honestly chip in. I'm like, okay, sure, sounds good. I guess my only thing that I would say with Spider-Man is however they involve him in, I hope it is just as fully fledged Spider-Man. We've seen the origin story for Spider-Man twice now in the past 10 years. I don't think there's anybody alive with a pulse that doesn't know where Spider-Man came from, so we don't need to see him become...
I completely agree.
He can show up as Spider-Man. Everyone knows who it is. Yeah. Everyone's going to be okay. I don't think there'll be any shock. So that would be my only contribution to that.
No, I completely agree.
See, that's why I would like it to still be Andrew Garfield, and I would like it to still be the same Spider-Man canon with the other ones. I mean... You can just make better movies, you know what I mean? Sure. A lot of people will go a lot of people say, well, these movies weren't good. I mean, they still made a lot of money. I mean, they maybe not as much as they could have, but they still made a lot of money. So Spider-Man is still very successful. And, there's talks of them doing a soft reboot, whatever the hell soft reboot actually means, with Sinister Six. And then there was also this news that there was going to be a Spider-Woman, that, they're going to be doing a Venom versus Carnage movie. And then, all of a sudden, there's, this crazy thing going on in Sony where they don't know what they're doing at all because they don't know if there are. I mean, it's really crazy. And I think that with him coming over to Marvel, if Sony needs to talk to Kevin Feige and figure out a way, in my opinion, to get the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man into, the Civil War storyline. Sure. That would be what I would want, because Andrew Garfield is the perfect Peter Parker and Spider-Man, in my opinion.
And the last thing that I'll add to that before we move on is that if they do that, Kevin Feige has to be the man, not just for Marvel now, but they have to be that for Sony and whatever individual Spider-Man stuff they do. Because if they're going to cross over, they're going to need to make sure that those stories are coherent. And that's a big thing for Marvel's end. So whatever the negotiations are, I guarantee that'll be a big part of it. So, all right, well, let's move on to the next one. Let's change it up a little bit. Barry, why don't you go next?
All right, so for my class today for InSession, I want to kind of talk about casting and how right now that is kind of all the big hype out there on the internet with every movie that's coming out, especially in all these superhero movies. I'm not completely familiar with the Doctor Strange lore and where he comes from, but every time a movie comes out, whoever the lead actor in that movie is rumored to play Doctor Strange. From Ewan McGregor to Ethan Hawke to Jared Leto to Keanu. Just
Joaquin
give
Phoenix.
it a break, man. Yeah, I just at this point I don't even want to see it because it's ridiculous. And it kind of continues around to X-Men Apocalypse. I read something today that Tom Hardy might play Apocalypse. It's just wait until you actually have a guy before you start spreading all these rumors. For my 2 cents, I'm just get tired of hearing about it. And then, like you finally said earlier, JD, with Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man, Disney, Marvel, you have trillions in the bank. Pony up the cash, keep this guy around, because if you don't do it, I think you're going to drop the ball a little bit, and you could set up a real failure for your big in-game plan. If you recast him right now, you're forever going to be compared, and he has to be, whoever you would cast would have to be twice as good as Robert Downey Jr. ever was, or else your movie's going to fail.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think a big problem with what you're talking about is that there are so many movie news sites out there, and what they'll do is they'll take little nuggets of information from something else that probably wasn't a big deal, and then they make a big deal out of it. And then all of a sudden there's rumors left and right, and of course the internet always takes that into a crazy level, and that's pretty much what's been happening. So left and right, this person's playing that, and you have that person doing this thing, and especially with the Doctor Strange stuff, that is a perfect example, because every day it's somebody new. And the internet goes crazy about it, and they know that, and it gets them talking about it, which is probably why they do it. But I agree, it is a little ridiculous.
I've worked on my fair share of Doctor Strange casting rumors articles. Just I don't know if you guys have seen them, but it's just I mean
it's fun for the fans to talk about.
Yeah, I try to weed it out. Like, I'll see something like that I don't necessarily think is too real and just more like a fan casting rumor that got picked up by a random website, and then everyone's running with it now. And then you're talking about the new stars, like Keanu, like he has John Wick coming out, which everyone has to go see. It's amazing. Well, Keanu would be a cool Doctor Strange. I think that, Keanu, given certain roles, can kill it, just like he killed John Wick. And I think that he could pull off a Doctor Strange. And, whoever it is, I do want to finally find out who it is. I'm trying my hardest to figure out who it is. I'm trying to talk to people. It's, everyone's saying different things, and that's what's just throwing everyone off.
Yeah, and I mean, I just think it's the volume right now too that we have right now in the movie culture between Marvel's massive universe and all the movies they're making, and then now DC is trying to rival them. So there's always casting rumors on the DC side.
Yeah.
Plus we've got a Star Wars film in the mix. Who's going to be in a Star Wars film? What role are they going to play? Like, it's just nonstop casting news, and then it's like, does this mean multi-pictures? Like, there's just so much speculation. There's not any reporting or anything.
Yeah.
And for me, like I said, I don't like to be spoiled. Like, I don't like watching trailers and things like that. I like to kind of, I like fact and like to see it for myself, the end product. So I'm not going to get super excited no matter who's cast to play either Apocalypse or, Doctor Strange. But, let's at least keep it to one guy a week instead of 7 guys a day. That would be my final point.
I think it was 3 days ago. I was working on an article because it came out. I think Variety put it out there. That there's like a list of guys that are definitely on the list, and I think it was like Ethan Hawke, is like Jake Gyllenhaal now, Matthew McConaughey even. Baddest Digest had Ewan McGregor and Jared Leto's still sticking around in there. Even Ryan Gosling. I think the Hollywood Reporter said that Ryan Gosling was in a meeting. He's also was in a meeting for Suicide Squad, which I would rather see him in Suicide Squad personally. But I definitely agree with what you're saying. It is getting a little out of hand, and like I said, I try to report on all breaking movie news and try to figure out what I can, and I try to weed out what is basically bullcrap, and try to put out who is actually in the running. Mm-hmm. It gets hard. People feed you wrong information.
I mean, and I don't mind some of it because it is fun to talk about, but at the same time, it is a good point that you bring up, Barry, because it is all day, every day for the most part. It seems to be happening every single day anyway, and it just doesn't need to get to those kinds of levels, because once you get to like real conversation, or like even when contracts are signed, that's also fun to talk about. So once Tom Hardy signs on for Suicide Squad officially, sure, let's talk about it. But
right, exactly.
You know what I mean? But we don't have to necessarily speculate and talk about it all the time. And it does get a little crazy for sure. But all right, Mike, your turn. Go for it.
Okay. So something in class is in session. Class is in session. Wow. Class is in session. Here we go. Okay. So I want to talk about kind of similar to what we were just saying with Doctor Strange, but kind of with Star Wars.
Okay.
Anyone who knows me. They know I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I mean, Star Wars got me into movies, and at a very young age, like 3 years old, I saw the first Star Wars movie, and the original trilogy. It changed my life. So now, as you know, I've been reporting on all the latest Star Wars news. We have kind of just gotten into this funk of trying to figure out as much as we possibly can about Star Wars Episode 7. What are the spin-off movies gonna be? Who's directing them? Who's starring in them? Who from the original movies is gonna be in these movies? Sure. What storyline? What is canon? What isn't canon? Are the people from the books gonna be brought in? Is this little thing that I saw in that first Star Wars Rebels episode, is that gonna play into Star Wars Episode 7?
Sure.
Who are John Boyega and who are Daisy Ridley playing? Who, are like, and I've even seen sites dropping information that is like huge, like I Am Your Father type spoilers.
Wow.
And wow. I am so against that. As a fan, I am going to dig a little bit, and as a
sure.
movie news reporter, I'm going to dig a little bit. I just did an article about it, about this kind of, it was called Get Excited for Star Wars Episode 7. And what I was saying, and what I'm saying now is, we're so focused on, what's going to happen. We don't just like sit back and just think that this is happening. Mm-hmm. It wasn't long ago when we didn't even know if we were ever going to get another Star Wars movie again. And now we're getting a lot of them. And, we're trying to figure out all these little things about it that we possibly can. But we need to just sit back and just say, wow, like we are getting more Star Wars movies. And they could possibly, they seem like they have the right people in charge. I trust J.J. Abrams. And so now everyone is just trying to figure out like, oh, what's gonna happen in this? Is it gonna be anything like that other trilogy? Like, we're trying to figure out what's gonna happen so we know we don't like get let down. I think we're just trying to get all this information so we know what to expect. And I think that what makes a lot of movies great is you don't know what's gonna happen in it. So when it does happen, you're like, oh man, that's just, it changes your viewing experience when you know something's gonna happen. And so, yeah, I just feel like we should, take a step back. I'm not trying to be like a hypocrite, because I do report on Star Wars news and, rumors and stuff on my website. But like I said, I don't go as far as to putting like real spoilers on there. Like I may like do a little bit on like what it might be about, something that will be in a trailer. I will put that on my website. Something we're gonna get like probably at least 3 trailers for Star Wars Episode 7, and I will put things like try to look for characters' names, maybe maybe who they are, not too much, and I don't want to know like what happens to them in the movie. You know what I mean?
Sure. And I can understand from a fan perspective, especially if it's something you're passionate about, you want to kind of dig into that sort of stuff. Because I remember when the first Transformers came out, I was a huge fan of the cartoon. I was a huge Transformers guy growing up, read all the comics. So when I first heard that Michael Bay was doing this back in 2007, I was super excited, and I would dig into that same sort of stuff. I wanted to know which characters there was going to come out, who the actors were going to be, and all that sort of stuff. And I understand that from a fan perspective for sure. I think the thing that has changed since then is the technology of how we receive information has progressed to a point where we can get anything we want on a dime any time of the day, and websites know this, news sources know this, and they know which keywords they hit on, so they write a lot of these articles that hit on certain points because they know it's going to get hits to their website, which is money for a lot of those people. And now it's become this thing where people aren't having the right conversation. They're just having conversation for the sake of it. And that's the problem. And I think where you're at, and I think where Barry was also getting at with his point too, is there has to be a middle ground. Because if you're hitting people over the head with it, it's not necessarily going to be fun. But at the same time, if people are reading those articles, they're probably looking for that information, like you were saying, Mike. But I do think that there has to be a switch from not having the conversation, but to having the right conversation about those things, because people want to talk about them. I get that, but let's kind of switch focus a little bit. And I think that's what we got to get to.
Yeah. I mean, like, believe me, like, the moment I hear from some source that telling me what the title of Star Wars Episode 7 is going to be, I'm going to be all over that. Like, that's not going to change, anything. That's not going to spoil the movie at all.
Sure.
But I don't want to know what happens at the end, I don't want to know who's going to die.
Yeah. Barry, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, like I said, I really, I agree a lot with Mike's manifesto about spoiling. I'm not a big fan of it at all, and for me, like I said earlier, like I really like to be as blind as possible. I a few years ago, when the Dark Knight Rises was coming out, I refused to watch any trailer. When I would go see movies and it would come on, I would leave. I would physically get up. I just didn't want to see anything. And Nolan's known for being very protective of his material, but I can't. I don't like it. I don't not associate, but I don't follow those blogs, those websites where it's constantly going. But it almost becomes impossible nowadays to avoid information like this because our news cycle doesn't report news. They report social media stuff. So like you're watching, Fox News and they're like breaking J.J. Abrams says, Darth Vader dies. It's like, what? No, what do you think? This isn't, not that I watch Fox News a lot, but I mean, that's just the kind of stuff that happens. Like, I mean, it's crazy. So I try to avoid it at all costs, and I'm right there. I agree.
I agree. It gets to the point where the directors of these movies and the studios are having to release videos saying, hey, stop talking about this.
Please stop doing this. And they have to give away stuff so people will, not break into sets. I mean, it's crazy. It's vandalism.
It is pretty nuts.
Like Batman v Superman. Like, did you hear about what just happened with their extra?
No. I do not want to get into that.
Yeah,
I won't get into it. I won't get into it. But I'll just say he leaked information about a character who is going to be in Batman v Superman. And he leaked it to a Michigan, it was a local place in Michigan, and probably in Detroit where they're filming.
Proof nothing good comes out of Michigan, JD, right there.
No, it proves that someone from Ohio moved to Michigan, and then that's what they did. That's what that means. So anyway, that's I had more stuff I would love to talk about, but we're running out of time, so that should do it for Classes in Session this time around. Hopefully we'll get to do more next time. But if you agree or disagree with anything we've talked about during this segment, let us know. Leave a comment on Facebook or Twitter, or once again, email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. Either way, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Before we get out of here for today, thanks, guys, for being here. I've loved having you guys on the show this week.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Before we get out of here, one more time, Mike, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me at MikeTheFilmGuy.com. I put, all breaking movie news on my website, and I do reviews on there as well, and you can subscribe to the website. You can also go to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/MikeTheFilmGuy. All my reviews are on there, and you can find me on Twitter at MikeTheFilmGuy.
What about you, Barry?
Nice, yeah. We don't have a website. We're too lazy to build one, and we don't have the technology or capabilities. So, but you can find us on Twitter. Again, True Bromance Cast. That's true without an E. We are super active on Twitter, either yelling at each other or other people when they're commenting on movies or things like that. Download our show on iTunes, and if you like it, please leave us a review. And we really appreciate coming on, JD. And it was a lot of fun as always, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I was really hoping to be on your show this week. I know it didn't work out because I was gone all weekend, but I was glad to at least get one of you here to talk Fury with me. It was a lot of fun. So definitely go ahead.
It's fun. No, I would say it is fun because you didn't want to be on our show, and here I am on your show. It worked out well.
I know. It worked out great. So, definitely go check out both of these guys' stuff. It's fantastic. Anyway, that should do it for this week's show. Be sure to go and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/InSessionFilm. You can follow us at Twitter at InSessionFilm and on Google Plus and YouTube as well. Just search InSessionFilm and sign up for our monthly newsletter. You can do that on Facebook by clicking the newsletter tab or on our site at InSessionFilm.com/newsletter. And for more thoughts on the films you watch, go check us out at Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/InSessionFilm. I'm putting up stuff all the time. So follow us there. I would love to follow you back. And we do try to respond to every piece of email. So you can email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. Also, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes and Stitcher. While you're on iTunes, if you would leave us a review, we would greatly, greatly appreciate it. And you can listen to the show anytime on our website at InSessionFilm.com/listen-now. And as mentioned, the InSession Film Podcast is supported by our super awesome listeners like you. Once again, if you want to help us, just go to InSessionFilm.com, click on our bonus content tab in our main menu to hear our fun bonus content for just a small donation of 99 cents. Or you can just go to InSessionFilm.com/donate for a bunch of other information there on how you can help us. One thing that I would recommend is you can hear everything we do on our mobile app for just a one-time fee of $1.99. You can find the app on the Amazon Market for Android devices, the Windows 8 phone store for Windows devices, and the Podcast Box app for iOS devices. And all those details are on the site at InSessionFilm.com/apps. Wow, that was a lot of stuff. So next week on the show, we're going to be discussing horns, and I'm not sure about our top 3 yet. Hopefully Blake will be back, but we'll release that information here pretty shortly. Before we get out of here, though, guys, Mike, did you have any final thoughts before we leave today on anything?
I think you guys should all go see Fury. It's a good movie. I recommend it. It was a lot of fun being here today. I loved being on the show. It was great to talk to you guys about movies.
Glad to have you on, man.
And if you heard me on here, just let me know that you first heard me on here and on Twitter at Mike the Film Guy. I love talking to new people about movies. If you want to send me a tweet, anything movie related or anything, just let me know or leave a comment on my YouTube videos or on my website.
Or what about you, Barry? Any final thoughts?
No, man, not really. Just thanks for having me on. I enjoyed the show. Go see Fury. It's a good movie. And I look forward to the next time I can come on and we can discuss movies.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely go check out these guys' stuff. As far as final thoughts from me, this week on our extra film, we're going to be talking about men, women, and children and the Swedish film We Are the Best. So be sure to be on the lookout for that as well. And also, once again, I would love your thoughts on the new intro. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was really fun. I really loved working with Eric, putting that together. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, email us. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. And one quick final thing is I want to say a huge happy birthday to my lovely wife, Brandy, for letting me do this and for financing a lot of it. So big thanks to her. I completely agree with you guys about Fury, though. Definitely go see that movie. It is amazing. I will definitely go watch it again this week. I loved every second of it. Could not recommend it anymore. But anyway, thanks everyone for listening. Be sure to be on the lookout for this week's extra film. And we'll see you guys next time on the InSession Film Podcast. For the entire version of our podcast, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or on Stitcher, or check us out online at InSessionFilm.com.